There's a reason why law enforcement agencies around the world studied ancient samurai combat psychology and then quietly stopped teaching it to their officers. What they discovered was so effective at neutralizing aggression and controlling violent impulses that it became too dangerous to spread widely. I'm talking about a mental technique that allowed samurai warriors to face death without flinching, to be insulted without reacting, and to transform the most intense rage into calculated precision in less than 3 breaths. And the most disturbing part, this technique works so well that when you master it, people who try to provoke you, manipulate you, or push your buttons will have absolutely no power over you anymore. My name is Barely Matters, but what matters is that 3 years ago, I destroyed a 6-year relationship, lost my job, and almost ended up in jail because I couldn't control my anger. I wasn't some violent criminal. I was just a regular person who let anger hijack my life, until one moment changed everything. I discovered this ancient samurai method buried in a 400-year-old combat manual, and within 90 days, I became someone I didn't recognize. The angry, reactive person I used to be was completely gone. Today, I'm going to break down exactly how this works, why it's so effective, and how you can use it starting today. But I need to warn you, once you learn this technique, you can't unlearn it, and the people around you will notice you've changed. Let's talk about something nobody wants to admit. We're living in the most anger-addicted society in human history. You see it everywhere. Road rage incidents have increased by 47% in the last decade. Workplace violence is at an all-time high. Online arguments escalate into real-world confrontations. Relationships crumble because people can't control their tempers for 5 minutes. And here's what's really happening beneath the surface. Your anger isn't just an emotion anymore. It's been weaponized against you. Every social media platform, every news outlet, every algorithm is designed to trigger your anger because angry people are predictable people. Angry people click, share, buy, and stay engaged. The modern world has turned your anger response into a profit center, and you've been conditioned to react instantly to any provocation. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and your blood boils. Someone disagrees with you online, and you feel compelled to destroy them with words. Your boss criticizes your work, and you fantasize about quitting dramatically. A family member makes one comment, and you're ready to burn bridges. This isn't strength. This is slavery. Here's what the samurai understood that we've completely forgotten. Anger is the easiest emotion to manipulate, which makes it the most dangerous weakness a warrior can have. In feudal Japan, if a samurai lost control of his anger during a confrontation, he was considered already dead. Not because anger made him weak in the moment, but because it made him predictable. An angry warrior telegraphs his moves, abandons strategy, and becomes a puppet dancing on his opponent's strings. The same principle applies to your life right now. Every time you lose control of your anger, someone else is pulling your strings, and you're doing exactly what they want you to do. Now here's where everyone gets this completely wrong. When you hear about anger control, you probably think about suppression. Count to 10, take deep breaths, walk away, think positive thoughts. All that therapeutic advice that sounds good in a counseling office but fails miserably when you're actually angry. Because suppressing anger doesn't make it go away, it just pushes it deeper until it explodes even worse later. You've experienced this yourself. You hold it in, stay professional, stay calm, and then one tiny thing happens and you absolutely lose it over something ridiculous. The samurai didn't suppress anger. They also didn't express it the way modern psychology tells you to. They didn't punch pillows or scream into the void or journal about their feelings. What they did was something far more sophisticated, and it's based on a principle that modern neuroscience has only recently begun to understand. The technique is called Fudoshin, which translates roughly to immovable mind or unshakable spirit. But that translation misses the real meaning. Fudoshin isn't about becoming emotionless or stoic. It's about achieving a mental state where external provocations simply cannot move you from your center. Think about a massive boulder sitting in a river. Water rushes around it constantly, sometimes violently, but the boulder doesn't move, doesn't react, doesn't get swept away. That's not because the boulder is fighting the water or suppressing the water or trying to stop the water. It simply has a foundation so solid that the water has no power to move it. This is what the samurai cultivated in their minds, not the suppression of anger, but the development of an internal foundation so strong that anger couldn't move them even when they felt it. And this is the part that law enforcement found too powerful to teach widely. When you develop this kind of mental foundation, you become extremely difficult to control, manipulate, or intimidate. So let me break down the actual technique. This isn't some mystical meditation that takes years to work. This is a practical combat psychology method that samurai warriors used in life or math situations, and you can start applying it today. The technique has 3 core components, and they must be practiced in sequence until they become automatic. First component is what the samurai called Mizu no Kokuro, or mind like water. This is about achieving a state of mental clarity where you observe anger as a separate phenomenon rather than identifying with it. Here's how you practice this starting right now. The next time you feel anger rising, and I mean the instant you feel it starting to build, you're going to do something that sounds simple but is actually revolutionary. You're going to say to yourself silently in your mind, there is anger present. Not I am angry, not I feel angry, but there is anger present. This small shift in language does something profound to your brain. It creates separation between you as the observer and anger as the observed phenomenon. You're no longer identifying with the anger, you're watching it like you would watch a storm through a window. The samurai practiced this until it became automatic because in combat, the first warrior to lose his center and identify with his emotions was the first warrior to die. When you say there is anger present, you're activating the observer part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which cannot be fully active at the same time as your amygdala, the part that drives fight or flight responses. You're literally hijacking your own nervous system, pulling yourself out of the emotional state and into an observational state. Practice this 50 times in small moments of irritation, and by the time real anger hits, this response will be automatic. The second component is mushin, or no mind, which is the most misunderstood concept in samurai philosophy. Mushin doesn't mean having an empty mind or thinking about nothing. It means having a mind that doesn't cling to any one thought or emotion. Picture your mind like a mirror. A mirror reflects everything that passes in front of it, but nothing sticks to the mirror. The reflection appears and disappears instantly. This is the state you're cultivating with anger. You acknowledge the anger, you feel it fully, but you don't grab onto it, amplify it, or build a story around it. Here's the practical application. After you've observed the anger by saying there is anger present, you're going to ask yourself one specific question, and this question was carved into the training halls of samurai dojos across Japan. What is anger asking me to protect? This question is critical because all anger, every single instance of it, is fundamentally a protection mechanism. You feel angry because some part of you perceives a threat to something you value: your ego, your status, your safety, your beliefs, your expectations. When you ask what anger is trying to protect, you're getting to the root cause instantly instead of getting lost in the surface emotion. Let me give you a real example. Someone insults you in front of others. Your instant reaction is rage. But if you pause and ask, what is this anger trying to protect, you'll realize it's trying to protect your social status and your self-image. Once you see that clearly, the anger loses its grip because you can now make a conscious choice. Is my social status actually threatened by this person's words, or is that just a perception? Do I need to react to protect something that isn't actually in danger? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, and the anger simply dissolves. The third and final component is zanshin, or remaining mind. This is about maintaining awareness even after the anger has passed. The biggest mistake people make with anger control is thinking the battle is over once they've calmed down. But the samurai knew that the moment after you diffuse your anger is when you're most vulnerable to it returning even stronger. Zanshin is the practice of staying alert and centered even after the immediate threat has passed. In practical terms, this means that after you've observed the anger and identified what it was protecting, you don't immediately jump back into the situation that triggered you. You maintain that observational distance for at least 3 full breath cycles. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 6 counts. Do this 3 times while maintaining your awareness of the space around you, the temperature of the air, the feeling of your feet on the ground. This is called tactical breathing, and it's used by special forces operators in combat situations because it forces your nervous system out of fight or flight mode and back into rest and digest mode. The samurai called it harmonizing with your surroundings. You're reestablishing your connection to physical reality instead of staying trapped in the mental narrative of anger. Now let's talk about why this works on a deeper psychological level, because understanding the mechanism makes the technique far more powerful. Your brain has 2 operating systems. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional, and reactive. This is your amygdala running the show. System 2 is slow, deliberate, logical, and strategic. This is your prefrontal cortex. When you get angry, System 1 takes over completely. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism designed to help you fight or flee from physical danger. The problem is that in the modern world, 99% of the things that trigger your anger aren't actually physical threats, but your brain doesn't know the difference. A sarcastic comment from a coworker triggers the same fight-or-flight response as a predator attacking you in the wilderness. Your body dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense, your vision narrows. You're literally in combat mode over an email. This is why traditional anger management fails. It tries to calm you down after System 1 has already taken over, which is like trying to stop a train that's already going full speed. The samurai technique works because it interrupts the process before System 1 fully engages. When you observe the anger, by saying there is anger present, you're activating System 2 before System 1 can fully hijack your brain. You're creating a gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap lies your freedom. Viktor Frankl, a psychologist who survived concentration camps, said that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. The samurai discovered this principle 500 years before modern psychology confirmed it. They trained themselves to widen that gap until it became so large that no external provocation could force them into automatic reaction. Here's what makes this technique dangerous in the eyes of authority structures. When you master this level of emotional control, you become extremely difficult to manipulate through fear, anger, or outrage. Think about how much of our social control systems rely on triggering strong emotional reactions. Political campaigns run on outrage. Media outlets profit from anger. Corporate managers use intimidation. Social dynamics depend on people being emotionally reactive and predictable. When you remove that vulnerability, you step outside the normal control mechanisms, and that makes certain people very uncomfortable. This is exactly what happened in feudal Japan. The samurai who mastered Fudoshin became so psychologically resilient that they were nearly impossible to govern through normal means of fear and intimidation. They couldn't be provoked into fights. They couldn't be manipulated through threats. They couldn't be controlled through emotional leverage. The only way to deal with them was through mutual respect and honor, which is why the samurai code of Bushido emphasized these principles so heavily. When an entire warrior class becomes immune to manipulation, the social order has to adapt. The same thing will happen in your life, but on a personal scale. When you become someone who cannot be emotionally manipulated, your relationships will change. Some people will respect you more. Others will be frustrated because their usual tactics don't work on you anymore. Your boss might find you harder to intimidate. Your family members might struggle to push your buttons. Your social circle might try to pull you back into old patterns. This is normal and expected. You're changing the social dynamics by changing yourself, and not everyone will appreciate it. Now let me walk you through exactly how to implement this in your real life. Starting today, I'm going to give you 3 specific scenarios and exactly how to apply the technique in each one. First scenario. Someone disrespects you publicly. Maybe they insult you in a meeting, mock you in front of friends, or post something about you online. Your instant reaction is to fire back, to defend yourself, to put them in their place. This is System 1 taking over. Instead, you're going to deploy the 3 components in sequence. Step 1. Observe. The moment you feel that surge of anger, mentally say there is disrespect happening and there is anger present. Not, they disrespected me and I'm angry, but there is disrespect and there is anger. You've just created separation. Step 2. Investigate. Ask yourself, what is this anger trying to protect? In this case, it's probably your reputation, your self-image, or your social standing. Step 3. Assess. Is your reputation actually damaged by this person's words, or are you just afraid it might be? 90% of the time, you'll realize that anyone whose opinion matters already knows your character, and anyone who believes a disrespectful comment wasn't worth impressing anyway. Step 4. Choose. Now that you've observed, investigated, and assessed, you can make a conscious choice about how to respond. Maybe you choose to address it calmly and directly. Maybe you choose to ignore it entirely because it doesn't warrant your energy. Maybe you even choose to agree and amplify it in a way that completely disarms the attack. The key is that you're choosing from a place of centeredness rather than reacting from a place of emotional hijacking. When you respond this way, something remarkable happens. The person who tried to provoke you realizes their attack didn't land, and they lose power in that moment. Second scenario, someone you love does something that triggers deep anger. This is harder because the emotional stakes are higher. Maybe your partner says something hurtful. Maybe your parent criticizes you in that specific way that always sets you off. Maybe your friend betrays your trust. The anger here comes with additional layers: hurt feelings, disappointment, fear of loss. The technique still applies, but you need to add one extra step. After you observe the anger and identify what it's protecting, you need to separate the person from their action. The samurai had a concept called the enemy of the moment, which meant that even someone you love can become an opponent in a specific interaction without being your enemy overall. Your partner said something hurtful, but that doesn't mean your partner is trying to hurt you intentionally. Your parent criticized you, but that doesn't mean they don't love you. When you can separate the action from the person, you can address the behavior without destroying the relationship. You can say, when you said that, it triggered anger in me because it touched on something I'm protecting, my sense of competence or my need for respect, and I want to talk about it calmly rather than react explosively. This level of emotional honesty from a place of centeredness is incredibly powerful. Most people either explode in anger or suppress it and harbor resentment. Both approaches poison relationships. When you can observe your anger, understand it, and communicate about it from a grounded place, you transform conflict into connection. You're showing the other person that you value the relationship more than you value being right or winning the argument. This is advanced level emotional mastery, and it will change every important relationship in your life. Third scenario, you're dealing with systemic frustration, traffic, bureaucracy, technical problems, things that aren't personal attacks but still trigger intense anger because they waste your time or create obstacles. This is where most people lose their emotional control because there's no clear target for the anger, so it just builds and builds until it explodes at someone innocent. The technique here requires you to shift your entire perspective on obstacles. The samurai viewed obstacles as training opportunities. Every difficulty was a chance to practice maintaining fudoshin under pressure. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of raging about the wasted time, you consciously practice observing the anger without identifying with it. There is traffic, there is frustration present. What is this anger protecting? Your sense of control, your schedule, your expectations about how things should be? Are any of those things actually under threat? Or are you just uncomfortable with not having control? Once you see it clearly, you can choose a different response. Use the time to listen to an audiobook, practice breath work, or simply observe your surroundings with genuine curiosity. You transform a frustration into a training session. Here's what happens when you practice this consistently for 90 days. Your entire nervous system begins to rewire itself. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. The samurai called it forging the spirit. Every time you interrupt the automatic anger response and choose a centered response instead, you're weakening the neural pathways that connect stimulus to rage and strengthening the pathways that connect stimulus to observation. It's literally like building a new road in your brain that becomes smoother and easier to travel each time you use it. The first week is the hardest because you're fighting against years or decades of conditioning. You'll forget to use the technique. You'll remember it too late after you've already lost your temper. That's completely normal. The samurai trained for years to master this. You're not going to perfect it in 7 days. But here's what you will notice. Even when you forget and react with anger, you'll catch yourself faster. Instead of staying angry for hours or days, you'll recognize what's happening within minutes. That recognition itself is progress. By week 3 or 4, something shifts. You'll start noticing the anger building earlier in the process before it reaches explosive levels. You'll have more time to deploy the technique. You'll start choosing different responses more consistently. People around you will start commenting that you seem different, calmer, more grounded. Some will appreciate it. Others might try to provoke you harder because your new calm challenges their own lack of emotional control. Stay the course. By day 90, the technique becomes largely automatic. You don't have to think about observing the anger anymore. It happens naturally. You don't have to consciously ask what the anger is protecting. You just know. You don't have to force yourself to maintain zanchin. It's just your new baseline state. This is when people will start asking you what's changed, how you stay so calm, why things that used to bother you don't anymore. This is when you realize you've developed what the samurai called immovable mind. But I need to give you a serious warning before you commit to this path. When you master your anger, you also master a kind of power that most people never access, and power comes with responsibility. The samurai who achieved Fudoshin were the most dangerous warriors on the battlefield, not because they were angry and aggressive, but because they were calm and calculated. When you remove anger from your decision-making, you become far more effective in conflict, which means you become far more capable of causing damage if you choose to. This is why the samurai code of Bushido was so strict. They understood that a warrior with complete emotional control needed an equally strong moral foundation. Without that moral foundation, you're not developing mastery, you're developing sociopathy. The difference between a master and a monster is that the master uses their emotional control to protect what matters and uplift others, while the monster uses it purely for personal gain and manipulation. You need to decide right now which one you're going to be. Additionally, once you develop this level of control, you can't really go back to being unconscious about your anger. You'll see other people's emotional manipulation clearly. You'll recognize when media and social systems are trying to trigger you. You'll feel out of sync with people who live in constant reactive mode. This awareness can be isolating if you're not prepared for it. You'll need to find other people who value emotional mastery, whether through martial arts communities, meditation groups, or philosophy discussions. You'll need a tribe that supports growth rather than pulls you back into unconsciousness. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 90 days, commit to practicing this technique every single time you feel anger rising. Keep a small notebook or use your phone to track it. Every time you successfully observe the anger, instead of identifying with it, mark it down. Every time you identify what the anger was protecting, write it out. Every time you maintain zanshin after the anger passes, record it. At the end of 90 days, look back at your progress. You'll see patterns, you'll see growth, you'll see transformation. Don't try to be perfect. The samurai weren't perfect. They were just committed to continuous improvement. Some days you'll nail the technique, other days you'll completely forget and lose your temper. The difference between someone who masters this and someone who gives up is simply that the master keeps returning to practice after every failure. Every angry outburst is just information about where you still need to work. There's no shame in it. There's only the opportunity to do better next time. Also, find one person you trust and tell them what you're doing. Give them permission to point out when they see you getting angry. This external observation is valuable because we often don't recognize our own emotional patterns until someone else mirrors them back to us. The samurai trained in pairs and groups specifically for this reason. You need someone who can see what you can't see in yourself. Make sure this person is someone who wants you to succeed, not someone who will use your vulnerability against you. Start today, not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. The next time something irritates you, it might be something small like dropping your phone or burning your toast. Use that moment to practice. Say there is irritation present. Ask what it's trying to protect. Stay centered for 3 breath cycles. Build the neural pathway with small repetitions so that when big anger hits, the response is already trained into your nervous system. This is how the samurai did it. This is how you'll do it. I'm going to leave you with one final truth that the samurai understood about anger, and it's the most important lesson of all. Your anger has never protected you from anything real. Think about that carefully. Every time you've lost your temper, every time you've lashed out, every time you've let rage take control, what did it actually protect? Did it make you safer? Did it improve your relationships? Did it solve any problems? Or did it just create more damage that you then had to spend time and energy repairing? The truth is that anger feels protective because it's an ancient survival mechanism. But in the modern world, it's almost never the appropriate response. The samurai recognized this 500 years ago. They lived in a time when violence was an actual daily threat, where disrespect could lead to duels to the death, where anger could mean survival. And even in that context, they concluded that anger was weakness. If the warriors who faced actual mortal combat decided that emotional control was more valuable than emotional expression, what does that tell you about your road rage or your Twitter argument? Your real power isn't in your ability to get angry. It's in your ability to choose not to. Every person who pushes your buttons is testing whether they control you or whether you control yourself. Every situation that triggers rage is asking whether you're the master of your mind or the slave of your emotions. The samurai spent their entire lives training to answer that question with absolutely certainty. They controlled themselves, which meant nothing external could control them. That's the freedom this technique offers you. Once you develop an immovable mind, you become truly free in a way most people never experience. You're not controlled by insults, not manipulated by provocation, not hijacked by circumstances. You observe everything, you respond to what deserves response, and you remain centered through it all. This is what the samurai achieved. This is what law enforcement agencies studied and then quietly stopped teaching because warriors who cannot be emotionally manipulated are dangerous to systems that rely on keeping people reactive and controlled. This is what you can achieve if you commit to the practice. The technique is in your hands now. 3 components: observe the anger without identifying with it, investigate what it's protecting, maintain awareness after it passes. 90 days of consistent practice. That's all it takes to transform from someone who is controlled by their anger into someone who simply cannot be moved by external provocations. The samurai did it, I did it, you can do it. The only question is whether you're willing to put in the work. Everything you need is in this video. Use it wisely.